This is Patrick with WSOU 89.5 FM, the loudest rock, here today with Bruce Dickinson. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, actually. Yeah, doing all right. Just, waiting for the snow.
Fantastic. So let's get right into it. You've got a new album coming out, the Mandrake Project. Mm-hmm. This is 10 years in the making. I'm curious to know how it started, like the seeds of it in 2014 versus how it ended up now.
Well, I mean, the oldest track on the record is actually 25 years old. So, which is the last track on the record. So some of the stuff was written like 2013, 2014. And we put demos down with the intention of going and doing the album. Maiden obviously borrowed one of the songs, mm-hmm. which was going to be the title track. So the title was going to be If Eternity Should Fail, which is from a Doctor Strange comic episode, which is all ties in with what eventually happened with us doing comic. My idea was going to be to do a comic with the album, and the album would be like a concept album with a narrator and all that sort of stuff, So it's not anymore, mm-hmm. for various reasons that I'll explain. But the back in 2014, that was the idea. So I came up with the basic story. And came up with two characters, Dr. Necropolis, Professor Lazarus. And I tied in a couple of tunes, well, a song from Accident at Birth, actually the title track. So that song became the start of the story. Anyway, fast forward to like a couple of years ago, when I was finally allowed back into the USA after COVID. And then before that, I was crazy busy with Maiden. And then before that, I had throat cancer. And so, there goes like 7 years. Album was actually done last year. So I've been sitting on my butt going, this is driving me nuts, not being able to release this album, because we played it to people. The people were going, oh, wow, it's such a great record. I went, I know, we want to release it, But the way of the world is you have to wait and tease people, and, you've got to do videos. And because it's going to be a double gatefold vinyl as well, mm-hmm. The production times, the lead time for getting your hands on vinyl, which is in short supply, so it is quite long. So we're working backwards on what's a good date, and March the 1st seemed to be a good date. So March the 1st, Mandrake Project, the album, is out. I mean, you can buy the comic tomorrow.
All right, fantastic. Yeah. So tomorrow would be January...
17, actually. 16 is tomorrow, but yeah, officially it's out on the 17th. But I'm doing a thing in St. Vitus in Brooklyn on the evening of the 17th. So the first episode of the comic comes out. The comic is moved so far from the original story. It was going to be one comic to go with the album. The album was going to tell the story of the comic. Well, now, in lockdown, I just, went raving mad and ended up having a few Zoom calls with some Hollywood writers who I really respected and admired their work. And we were bouncing ideas around, and they said, you should really do this with a comic. So I went, okay, all right. So had 3 years to muck around, and now we've got a 12-episode comic, graphic novel, whatever you want to call it, And if you're a member of the middle classes and you can't stand the idea of I'm reading a comic, it's a graphic novel, man. But if you're like a pleb like me, it's a comic.
Yeah, and you said the idea for the comic originally, If Eternity Should Fail, that was a Doctor Strange title.
Yeah. I just thought it was I borrowed the name of the episode because I thought, what a great name for a record, Yeah. But when Maiden put it on their album, I was thinking, well, I could kind of repossess the song, as it were, when I re-record it. And so that's what's happened. But because the story had moved on of the comic, I actually introduced elements of the new comic story back into the lyrics. So there's lyrics on the album that are connected with the comic, but they don't tell the story of the comic. They're kind of atmospheric. Mm-hmm. So I make the analogy the album and the comic is like two big trees in a forest. They're not leaning on each other. They're independent of each other. But if you look closely, they're connected at the roots, because the roots all kind of mingle in trees. They all talk to each other and do weird stuff. Lord of the Rings, Ents, yeah.
Absolutely. And I've heard you say that you can read the comic and not have to listen to the album, and vice versa. But what can a Bruce fan take away from doing both? Or just either one?
There's little Easter eggs all over the place, So and similarly in the video that we did. So I had the comic, and then I thought, the first track was going to be Afterglow of Ragnarok, and I thought that is actually a pain. Because, first of all, Afterglow of Ragnarok is nothing to do with the comic. And it is the only song that mentions anything that might be remotely to do with Vikings and hairy-chested men running around covering themselves in oil with pointy things on their heads. And I just wanted to be a million miles away from that. And I think, how the hell do I do a video for this tune? So I wrote a treatment for a video, which was basically... Dr. Necropolis drinks his hallucinogenic Mandrake potion, which incidentally, don't try this at home, kids, because it can be fatal. And goes on a trip. And the song Afterglow and Ragnarok is effectively a trip. And at the end of it, he's dead. And his girlfriend comes in and goes, "You stupid idiot," and puts the paddles on him and starts his heart up again. So I did it as a tease. Then I looked at this script and went, there's no way we can afford, on the budget we've got for the video, there's no way I can afford to shoot this. Hey, I'll make it into a kind of an introductory 8-page comic, which is it was a good dress rehearsal for the comic as 34-page version of it. So we used the same artist, Stas Johnson. We used the same script writer, Tony Lee, who's my script writer. We work on the scripts together. And it came out great. And then we said, well, we still have to make a video. So I found a video director, this guy Ryan Macfall, down in the West Country of England, in Cornwall, down there, which is a very weird and spooky and mystical kind of place, King Arthur and all that. And I said to him, look, I love your stuff, but tell me, what video are you going to shoot? He said, well, you've already written the storyboard. I mean, I'm going to shoot the comic. I went, oh, we can't afford that. He said, oh, yes, you can. So he pulled in favors from all over the place and put that together. And now we've just done another one. So we've just done the second track, which is going to be Rain on the Graves. And that one, we've gone full Hammer horror on that one. It's great. It's like a sort of, I love doing kind of like mini movies and things like that. If you can get hold of the cash to be able to do that kind of thing, it's fun. I mean, who wants to see a bunch of people? I mean, I know it's nice to see I guess a band doing a live thing, but it's not really live.
Yeah.
So why not try to do something creative?
I don't know if you remember, there's a Beavis and Butthead episode that we play a lot at WSOU where they say, even if Maiden did Unplugged, I bet they'd still do explosions, because that's how crazy the videos are. So what more can you say about bringing your stories, your ideas to life in the form of a video?
Well, I mean, for Rain on the Graves, we actually had a shot at doing the video from the ground up. Mm-hmm. So, like all good ideas, it got put together in the pub when we just finished the shoot for Ragnarok. And of course, I was in LA. Ryan was making the video independently, and I was just trusting him that he was going to stick to the comic. He was sending me rushes and things like that, and I was thinking, yeah, that looks really cool. We had an actor playing Necropolis, and my stuff was just done against a green screen. So I actually had no idea what I was standing in front of, except it was probably going to be dramatic. And I thought, they gave me this big, grey hoodie thing. And I'm like, this is kind of like Star Wars, like the evil emperor in Star Wars. I went, yeah, let's do evil emperor vibe there, But this one we had the chance to do it kind of from the ground up, and because Ryan is a crazy, like me, fan of like Hammer horror and like English folklore type horror films and early Universal stuff, black and white stuff. We said let's go Hammer on this, because the story of Rain on the Graves is a guy walks into a graveyard, meets the devil, and the devil says, "What are you doing here? And don't lie, because I'll know." So I said, okay, let's have some weird preacher, and he's like, something's chasing him, and he comes into the graveyard, and he's looking for something, and there is the devil in the graveyard, and he sells his soul to the devil in return for one night playing with the house band of hell. And I won't tell you how it ends.
Yeah, no. Okay. And I think it's interesting you're talking about Hammer horror. You mentioned Afterglow Ragnarok has some Viking themes, which is funny because I saw an interview you did promoting Fear of the Dark back in 1992, saying how it was the most real thing Maiden had ever done, because up until that point you had done a lot of stuff with mythology and things like that, because you had entered the real world and that had kind of shaped your perspective. How has the world shaped your perspective from then up until now with Afterglow Ragnarok and the Mandrake Project?
Well, the Mandrake Project's a complete. If I look at the comic world, I say, well, that's a complete world. I've created a complete world. Still creating it actually, because you build the characters, you build the backstory, you build the environment, everything. The roots of the comic go back like 100 years in storytelling terms. But the great thing about comics is you can go into different worlds as well. So you can exist in two different universes parallel at the same time, or wherever you want. You can do whatever you want to do, as long as it tells a story and it makes it like that. So in terms of the album, there's quite a lot of stuff about love and death on the record, which is always good because there's quite a lot of love and death out there. A lot of my friends have, or not a lot, but more than I'm happy with, have all passed away recently, because you get into that kind of era when people suddenly go, "What do you mean he's dropped dead?" So it gives you pause. I had my own little brush with it when I had the throat cancer thing, and whilst I made the full recovery and everything, for a while there, you do start thinking, okay, what's it like to actually die and to know that you're going to die? You don't think that when you're 16 years old. Right. It's not something that actually, it's not something you even consider, right? In fact, I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if they just said that, everybody who was going to fight wars had to be over 40 years old? I'll tell you what, there'd be a lot less wars, because people who are 16, 17, 18 are just like, oh yeah, we're invincible. We're not going to get blown up by a landmine, So that invincibility is great because it spurs on human growth and invention and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, people do stupid things, But yeah, so as you get older, obviously, you start to think a bit more about that kind of stuff. And from the point of view of writing, it can be quite inspirational because I'm not a depressive personality. So when I do melancholy or ironic, or it cheers me up.
Yes.
So I can wander around graveyards all day and go, wow, this makes me feel really like, oh, kind of sad and this and that. But the reason why you can feel that is because you're like, I'm not dead.
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, and I heard you mention about the last song on the album, Sonata. You said how throughout your career, a lot of people, their go-to thing to say to you is, "Oh man, that rocked," or "Oh man, that's banging or something. But a lot of people said about Sonata, like it touched them and it made them feel like what's that like for you as a guy who throughout your career has always been told you rock? Now it's like, oh, you touched me.
Yeah. Well, it's to be honest with you, it's sort of as you go through your career, it's something you aspire to more and more and more, because I realized that all the great songs, experiences, whatever that people really remember, have that quality, and even songs that that really rock, they have that same quality too. It's not exclusive. Just because a song's a rock song doesn't mean it can't touch you. But Sonata is different because it's this almost like ambient thing going on. And also the way it was recorded was pretty unusual. So, I mean, basically, Roy, the producer, my songwriter, partner, everything, he went out and saw the movie, Immortal Beloved, Gary Oldman as Beethoven. Came back suitably inspired, stayed up all night, playing around in the studio, and put this 10-minute backtrack thing together, just with a drum machine and a little loop sample of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, and kind of like left it like that. And then I'm not even sure when it must have been between. I think it was between Chemical Wedding and Tyranny of Souls. It might even have been at the back end of Chemical Wedding. So anyway, we're hanging out, and he said, "Hey, take a listen to this." So he played it to me, and I was just like, "Wow, that's really sort of different." There's no obvious, and here's the really crazy heavy gallopy bit or anything like that, I said, but it's really kind of dramatic, and it's I don't know what to do with that. Tell you what, let me go in the studio and just switch the mic on, and I'll make something up. So the words that came out of my mouth are the words that are on the record. The actual first time I did it, it's one take. So 80% of that track is sort of stream of consciousness, improvisation, one take. That was it. And we put the song away for 25 years and forgot about it. And when the song got dug out again, and Roy put it on a CD, and I was driving around LA when we got back together, listening to all these different ideas and things. And this track was on, and Leanna, my wife, she was listening to it. She's got pretty good taste in music, much better than mine. And she was like, "What's that?" I went, "Oh, it's just something we did like years ago." She goes, "I've never heard you sing like that." She goes, "That's amazing." She goes, "It makes me feel, wow, really emotional." I went, "Oh, so you think it's okay?" She goes, "God, I'm divorcing you if you don't put that on the record." So, I took that pretty seriously. And so it's on the record. We had to fiddle a couple of things. I had to construct a second verse because there wasn't one. Mm-hmm. I just didn't sing a second verse because I was so taken aback that I'd done a first verse and the chorus. I was like a little bit too pleased with myself. I was like, "Wow, I can't believe we just did that. Wow. We're in the second verse. Oh, no. Generally, a chorus comes along in a minute. Boom." So we did that. But all the spoken word and everything, there's a lot of links on this album. And that one of them is, it's at least in my head, maybe not obviously to other people, but in my head, I try to link Accident at Birth, Chemical Wedding, Tyranny, and all of those things, because they all have got little parts that are on this album. So the story of the Mandrake Project started out as the story of Accident at Birth. A guy is separated from his brother at birth. His brother's in hell. He's not. He gets survivor's guilt. He's raging against God. What if there was a way of bringing his brother back? So that's been dropped into the actual comic, The Mandrake Project. Taking the Queen off Accident at Birth, as soon as I started singing Sonata, after about 5 minutes, I'm like, this is kind of a twisted version of Sleeping Beauty. And who's the queen? Who is the beauty? She's the queen, taking the queen. She's the queen from taking the queen. So when the queen dies in taking the queen, where does she end up? In the dark forest. And suddenly, it's weird to try and explain how these bits just drop into your brain so rapidly. It doesn't happen all the time, because you drive yourself mad. But when you're really in the zone, stuff happens like that, So, for example, Ragnarok and Many Doors to Help, we basically wrote those tunes in 2 or 3 days. As soon as we got back together, I mean, Z had the riffs and things. I have no idea why I sang the Afterglow of Ragnarok. I thought, that sounds really cool. It is, unfortunately, kind of Viking. And I really want to avoid like bearskins and things and all the rest of it. Hence the reason why the video doesn't have any Vikings in it at all. And the single cover, we put some artists on it, and all of them came out with like Viking longships and Eric the Red. I'm like, no, let's just do a picture. Yeah. So, and the Mandrake kind of like logo, which is really cool.
Yeah, and you mentioned Roy Z and the recording of Sonata. He's been your producer for 30 years now. So what does he bring out of you creatively that has made you want to keep working with him again and again?
I've got absolute confidence that every crackpot idea that comes into my mind, he will be able to turn into something. And at the same time, I get hugely inspired by him, his guitar playing and his kind of like sound palette that he comes up with. And we kind of bounce off each other, I think, really, really effectively, and we sit around, when we're songwriting, we used to sit around for, a few hours, just basically drinking coffee and eating bran muffins and not really getting anywhere. And then suddenly everything would happen in like 30 seconds. And you go, whoa, that's it. Wait, quick, switch the mic on, capture that moment. And once you've captured the moment, you've got it. Then it's kind of like development work after that, But you've got to have that excitement, that initial wow moment,
And you've talked about how Sonata, for example, was stream of consciousness. You just mentioned how sometimes you'd sit down for coffee and then come up with an idea. How often does it happen like that versus it takes a lot of time?
I'd say with me, if I'm writing on my own, so a lot of the songs on this album were written by me, like just on my own solo with guitar or piano or whatever. And then I took them to Roy, and then we worked on them, and they became bigger. Let me give you an example of stuff like that. So Resurrection Men, okay? So Resurrection Men, so that's, who are the Resurrection Men? Well, they're Dr. Necropolis and Professor Lazarus, and I had kind of this, I was kind of like thinking like a weird kind of Hawkwind type vibe with the verse, and then a big chorus. So I had the chorus and I had the verse and this intro, and that's it. I hadn't put the middle bit, whatever it was going to be. I thought, I'll leave that up to Z because he's Guitar World, So we were putting it down, and I was playing the guitar, which I do quite badly. And I said at the beginning, we should put something over that intro. I don't know what really. Hang on. And I found the tremolo button on the guitar. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, this is like Dick Dale's Surfer World. I went, how would this sound if this was like the beginning of a Quentin Tarantino movie, like Spaghetti Western? Down, 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 down. Yeah. So I played that. And then Roy kept it. I said, yeah, of course you're going to replace that with a proper guitar. He said, no, that is a proper guitar. I said, I'm not a guitarist. He said, you are now. So, and then I said, well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to torture you, because if we're going to go like spaghetti western, we've got to have bongos. So, yeah, I'm also guilty as charged on the bongos. But then, of course, we got to the middle section, and, Roy, and he just came up with this, just out of the blue, this like geezer, like gnarly, like riff. I was like, holy crap, we've just taken this song somewhere else. And it all comes back and resolves at the end. So that's one song. And the other one, for example, Face in the Mirror, I was thinking that song was probably not, I wrote that as an acoustic little thing, didn't know where it was going to go, recorded it, or recorded a version of it as a demo, and thought, I'm not really sure that's going to make the record, I came back a few years, 2 or 3 years later, Z had said, he said, I want to play you something. That song, he said, the words, and they really kind of spoke to me. So I thought, I can't let that song go. So he'd done a couple of edits on it, put it back together. I went, wow, that sounds quite good, So suddenly it makes the record. And that's my other bit of guitar playing on the record, is the little like nylon string guitar solo in the middle of it, which is, I suppose you could say it was like naive guitar,
Now, you've mentioned bongos, you've mentioned nylon guitar, you've mentioned...
Flutes. Did I mention flutes? Yeah.
You didn't.
No, we have flutes. We have a Peruvian flute player. Because the beginning of Eternity Should Fail was me playing a keyboard of that little opening riff. And so it's not a great keyboard sound, but it was a generic sound of a trumpet. So my original idea was, again, that like the Tarantino, Morricone, whatever it is, vibe, spaghetti western thing, mariachi trumpets, right? With like maracas and stuff shaking away and like rattlesnakes going on in the background. Or Maiden did the version, and I said, what are you going to do about the intro? And Steve went, oh, it sounds great. I went, really? I think it could sound better, but okay, if you're happy with it. So they kept my keyboard and also my spoken word outro. The spoken word outro was put on during the demo because I just wanted to see what it would sound like if I was doing my best, Vincent Price narrator type voice. See if it sounded really stupid. Because at the time I was thinking of having it narrated and a link between all the songs. That's gone out the window because I got the comic. I don't need to do that now. But then again, when Maiden recorded it, they kept it, and I was just like, yeah, nobody will know what this means, But anyway, so when we got to re-record it, we didn't bother with mariachi trumpets. Instead, Roy knew this great Peruvian flute player who came along and did the similar thing on the flute. So that works for me.
You seem very surprised that a lot of your ideas have been kept in certain songs, whether it's by Roy or by Maiden.
Well, yeah, because I'm very for somebody that's I'm sort of off the wall when it comes to writing stuff. But when I listen to stuff back, I hate things not to be really perfect. Mm-hmm. At the same time, often, I'm too lazy to make them perfect. So that's why I have Z to kick me up the ass, and I kind of do the same thing, not exactly the same thing to him, but when he's doing guitar solos, he always wants me in. If I'm around, he always wants me in the room because we eye contact and riff off each other, and I'm like, that was great, or yeah, you could do a bit better than that one, bam, bam, bam. So he doesn't have to worry about, he's performing to me, and then when I'm doing my vocal, I'm performing to him, and we do it in a tiny little studio and the door's open. So he's listening on headphones. He's sitting at the desk, and I'm where Todd's standing right now, and we can talk to each other, and we can, it's really natural sort of thing.
So Roy is going to be joining you on the road along with your band, and you just mentioned how you kind of perform for each other, play off each other. How do you think you guys kind of have that dynamic on the road, or will have it on the road for this tour?
Well, I've worked with Roy before, years ago, obviously, and he's a force of nature on the guitar. And I want people to see that, because nobody's seen it for, 20-something years. And with the band, Mysteria, for example, on the keyboards, has done all the keyboards on all my records. He's incredible. This guy, wow. And he plays an amazing guitar. So between Z and him, dueling on the guitars and guitar, that's why I don't have a second guitar player. Roy is like 1.5 players on his own. So I'd rather have the colours of the keyboards and everything, and, big steaming hot Hammonds like churning away there. I've got Dave on the drums, who's fabulous, and he obviously played on the records and Tyranny as well. And then Tanya O'Callaghan on the bass. And I met her when I was doing this classical thing, a concerto for group and orchestra, John Lord's concerto. And so earlier last year, like April, we did like a dozen shows in Brazil and Europe with a full orchestra. Tanya was the bass player of the band, and I'd never met her before. We got on great, and she was a terrific bass player. And I said, "Look, what are you doing next year?" She went, "Oh, I think David Coverdale's having a year off." I went, "Do you want to do the gig?" So there we are. So we've got that, and we're doing like 40-something shows solo. Obviously, there'll probably be a couple of warm-up shows because we're rehearsing in LA. So probably be a couple of warm-up shows somewhere secret, before we go to Mexico, Brazil, and then around Europe. And obviously, I want to bring this project to the USA. Can't do it this year because I'm full up. With Maiden. I'm going to be touring the States with Maiden in any case. But hey, maybe 25. Let's see.
Fantastic. So you're someone who's been known, you and your various projects, to bring stories and themes to life on the stage, whether it's Senjutsu, which was very samurai themed, or an old school example like Power Slave, a lot of ancient Egyptian imagery. What can we expect to see? What can we expect to see on this tour to see the Mandrake Project on the stage?
Well, when we're doing, look at the size of the venues that we're doing, I suppose the average size of venue we're doing headlining is probably about just over 2,000, 2,300, something like that. So some of them are like 5,000, some of them are like 1,800, and so, that means it's either a theatre stage or a big club venue type stage. So we're bringing a screen with us. And of course, we've got a lot of video content. So we've got a lot of stuff that we did, backgrounds and things like that. Band-wise, it's going to look quite different, the stage layout to like the Maiden layout. There's no scenery, there's no monsters. There's just the 5 of us and music and the screen, and we'll let the music do the talking.
All right. And my dad actually had the chance to see you when Iron Maiden came to Prudential Center in New Jersey. I unfortunately could not make it, but I asked him how it was, and the first thing he said was, Bruce's voice is incredible. They're playing every song in the same key. Not every song, but most of the songs in the same key.
They play all the songs in the same key.
Oh, yeah, all the songs in the same key as it was back in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. What have you done to preserve your voice to the point where you could still sing this powerfully? Because you could hear it on this album, too.
It's not something that I've done. I think it's a lot of things that I haven't done. So I think just generally, just keep yourself generally fit. Also, I'm quite picky about monitoring and about trying to look after my voice when I am using it. Yeah, I do have to live a little bit like a monk when I'm on tour. I can have a couple of beers and relax after a show or something. But you can't be going out and going to gigs and hanging out with people all night long because there are bugs flying around. You don't want to catch the bugs. And you just don't want to use that voice for pretty much anything else except singing. Right. So when I'm doing promo tours, I'm like blah 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 blah. But if somebody said, "Hey, would you like to come and sing with the band on stage?" I'm like, no, because I need if I'm going to go into singing head, I need to really adapt my lifestyle and everything. That's what I'm going to do and be focused on it. So this year, come like the back end of March, I'm in singing head for the entire year,
Yeah, well, I am being told we need to wrap it up. Maybe rest your voice for a little bit
now. I've got 6 hours of this, man.
So Bruce Dickinson, the Mandrake Project, out March 1st.
Yep.
And is there anything else you want to add? Anything else you want to say?
No, it's not really. It's the best solo record I've ever made. I mean, really, before this record, I would have said Chemical Wedding. Mm-hmm. But this one, honestly, I think tops it.
All right. Well, Bruce Dickinson's very best. You heard it here first. This is Patrick, WSOU 89.5. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, man.